All right, so Marco. So I think we should applaud for Marco because he was on 2 times ago, and he's been waiting patiently to come up. And he woke up this morning with a bit of a cold, so he's being careful. But we're going to talk about the IRA and what's in it for you, because part of the transition is really taking advantage of the bills that have been passed, but we can't take advantage of them if we don't know where the benefits are. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next few minutes.
Do any of these mics work?
Any way you want.
Hello? Awesome. All right.
Should we stand or you want to sit? Let's stand.
We can do anything.
I want to stand.
Yeah. So I just want to say, please excuse me if I'm coughing or my voice is a little low. As Bob had said, I woke up with a sore throat, tested myself negative for COVID, and hopefully it remains negative. So right now I was just playing it safe and keeping my distance. So if I saw you, I'd probably fist bumped you instead of anything else. So just as a short introduction, I'm Marco Manno. I work with SNN, the Suncoast News Network, as a meteorologist and as an anchor and reporter. I think it was great even to see Mike from ABC7 here because, while we're technically competing stations, this is climate, it's important, all the coverage it needs to get. So, and I've met him before, and he's a very sweet guy. So I was happy to see him here, and Valeska, our reporter there, taking video right now. Before we begin with the IRA, I just want to say something from a millennial perspective. Anytime I talk about age, by the by, whatever I say usually sounds like a backhanded compliment, so bear with me. But there are a lot of people in my generation and Gen Z who, they're very concerned about the climate, and they always think they were dealt this really bad hand, that previous generations failed them, and that now they have to pick up the pieces. And I tell them, I met Bob a few years ago. It's probably no mystery that we're not the same generation. And Bob cares very, very deeply about this. And many of you who are baby boomers or Gen X, you're not part of my generation. A lot of you aren't even thinking about yourselves. You're thinking about your kids or your grandkids. And I tell them there are a lot of people that they may have lost some battles on the way, but they've been fighting every step of the way. And that's what you're doing here right now. So I appreciate all of you being here because it's really important. And nothing makes me more optimistic than seeing a lot of people wanting to get stuff done coming to an event like this.
Well, thank you so much, Marco.
Yeah.
The reason I relate to him so much is because he's so into what he does. And when we get together, we could do the whole day at SNN.
We could do a 40-minute interview, but there's a jillion other stories we got to get to.
So the cool thing that's going on is that, like it or not, we have opportunities that we're going to be paying for that we need to make effective. And it's called $1.7 trillion for infrastructure and for the IRA, which a lot of that is for climate. We've never had this opportunity before in the history of the world to have $1 trillion to fix anything. And if we use it well, we're going to get paid to do what we all should do anyway, even if we didn't. So we want to talk about this Inflation Reduction Act. First of all, I want to tell you there's about 43 gigatons of carbon going into the air every year. And a gigaton is 2.2 trillion pounds of CO2. It's so vast, it's hard to get your mind around it, except when you start talking about trillions of dollars. They're all like, oh my God, how do we relate to this? But this is one way to do it. The United States, back in 2005, emitted 6.6 trillion gigatons. In 2030, with these bills, we think we're going to get down to 3.8. Now that is a remarkable improvement, and it's in a country that since 2005, the GDP has gone up by about 60%. So we are getting really, really efficient in this country compared to any others. And when companies move here and use and make products here, they're using a clean energy compared to what they can make any other place. So when you go to Amazon and you buy a product, 60% of them are made in China, and the power mix there is 2x worse than it is here. When you buy them here, you're going to pay a dime more, but they're twice as clean. So there's another place where you can make a decision for a few extra pennies. And now that we have this help coming, you can see where these cuts are going to come. It's going to come from transportation is going to be 29% more efficient, and the power grid, which powers the electric cars and all of the things going electric, is a 37%. And industry is 13%. So if you add all of this together, this is an amazing opportunity waiting to happen, and it's going to happen because you guys make it happen if you can take advantage of what's going on. So Marco, tell us where all this money is.
So a lot of small print here, but it goes into a whole host of categories, and some of them, as you guys spoke about in the previous session, are healthcare related and all of that. But clean energy, especially tax incentives, is a huge portion of this. I think one of the future slides goes into it a bit more, but I'll just mention that some of these things like tax credits, clean fuel tax credits, credits for modernizing your home with energy efficient appliances, air conditioning, water heater. I bring those up because we just did that last year, thank God. And we're installing hurricane strength windows that are also energy saving. You can bet we're going to write that off. But all of this works in conjunction with the infrastructure law, meaning that, for example, the infrastructure law expands the national electric grid. So it's supposed to, in theory, be easier to drive coast to coast because on federal highways, you know, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of electric charging stations. But when the previous Build Back Better bill had failed, the all-comprehensive bill, part of it that was resurrected for the Inflation Reduction Act was the list of incentives to make the investment in the national energy grid worthwhile and more meaningful, because it's a lot easier to have a national grid when you're incentivizing people to purchase products to utilize said grid. So a lot of it was supposed to work in tandem, and a lot of it is. One of the things I talked to Bob about, and I think he's even mentioned too, is that it matters where you make things, not just that you're making them. We want to make sure these things are made clean. And sometimes things are passed, signed into law that are more fluff than meat. And I asked him, I said, give me your professional scientific opinion on the Inflation Reduction Act. And he said, I have never been as excited as I am because there's so much scientifically sound array of components in the bill. So as somebody in media, sometimes it's hard to talk about this stuff because I'm part of meteorologist, but I'm part of reporter, so sometimes it's hard to praise a bill without feeling completely biased, right? Like in some places there could be a conflict of interest. But just in a scientific way, very difficult to, to be upset about what happened last year with that in conjunction with the infrastructure law the previous year, just when you look at climate.
So all of this money, Marco, is going to help us make the shift that we have to make. We would have to make it if we didn't have it. Now that we have it, it's going to be easier. So let's look at this and see, because you out there need to know where this money is, because when you make the shift, you can get tax incentives, you can get tax credits, and when you have to make the decisions, you can make these decisions knowing that you're going to have help to do it. If you don't use it, somebody else is going to use it. Our cities need to use it. Us as individuals need to use it. Our building contractors need to use it. And it's there for them. And it could total, like I say, 1.7 trillion is the amount in both. Some of it isn't climate warming, but in the bill for the IRA, it's actually uncapped. It's actually possible it could go to 800 billion because there's no cap. If people want to use it, they can unlimit. It doesn't sunset. You can use it until 2032, and if it goes over 397 billion, it's okay. They'll let you do that.
And that's one of the big things that extend a lot of those tax credits. 2032, I mean, a full 10 years from its signing, you can take advantage. So if you're not able to afford it, it's not in the works yet, because everybody has their own financial story. 10 years.
Is there one thing in here that for you as a millennial that you think is the most important, or?
For me, especially looking at gas prices, it really pushes me even further to the electric car. I've wanted to do that a while, and I think Sarasota too, and I'm starting to see more in Bradenton, have a lot of those charging stations where you're actually able to go around a lot easier. But I've still kind of held off, and that's probably one of the things that might really push me. As I said, we have the 3 projects with the AC water heater and with the hurricane-proof windows, but after that, world's my oyster.
So let's take some questions from the audience about this bill and how you feel about it and what we can do to help you use it.
You over there.
So the tax credits are not income restricted at all, but No, that's okay. So the tax credits aren't income restricted from what I understand, but the rebates are. Is that correct? And then do we know how the rebates are going to be implemented in the states yet? Like, are people going to receive a check, or is that information still to come?
Do you want to start that?
Yes. So anyway, the rules take a long time. So the bill were just passed, and there's a lot of work going on writing the actual how you implement them. We know what the limits are, but we don't know exactly how much flexibility there's going to be on if you make $1 too much or what have you. So, I mean, we are going to have to check that as it goes along, and there's a lot of programs in different departments that are going to be using this. The Energy Department, for example, is giving $100 billion away to help get the electric grid going, and people can come and make proposals. They can be small, medium, or large, and they have to get this money out. So they're trying to figure out how to do that much money. So so there's a lot of opportunities here for creative people to go in there and figure out how to use this, because all the rules are just being written now.
I will say, and if I'm misunderstanding part of your question, just let me know. But I know with a lot of the rebates, I think they work with a lot of other incentives where after you've purchased it, you can write it off as part of your deductions in the next year. So last year, my better half and I, my way better half and I, brownie points for that one. So we had purchased a new air conditioning and new water heater. So I think the standard deduction is still up to $12,000. I think. I don't think it's
I think it's a little more, but
but we're going to see if that, along with everything else, actually pushes us over that, and we can get more money back for that. But both those purchases were made in 2022, so those are ones we're looking at in our 2023 taxes. Was that what you were referring to?
And I think if you look at this chart here, you can see the difference between tax rebate and write-off. So sometimes you're going to get a tax rebate, which means you don't have to itemize. If you owe $1,000 and you have a $900 worth of rebates, then you're only going to pay $100. If you itemize, you'll also get credits. So not credits, but deductions. So if you're itemizing, you'll be able to take a deduction against your income. So there are 2 different styles in this bill, and they can be used together or separately.
These are all tax credits, though.
tax credits or some are tax credits and some are deductions that you can take up to a certain amount.
Standard deduction's about 24,000 for
Okay.
A couple,
a couple, other than those who are old enough to get the extra amount.
right, like me.
Another 1,700 each. for
Yeah,
those-
you're not qualified for that yet.
Yeah, the Sarasota demographic takes great advantage of that.
Did you have a question? Could you?
If I'm interpreting this correctly, the bill seems to be all carrot, no stick. No penalties for not doing things. Have I got that right?
I would say that's right. Doc,
Maybe I'm being too discouraged, but we've talked about bipartisan support for climate adaptation. And yet, as I recall this act, it was 100% passed by Democrats. There was not one Republican that supported this. Am I right?
Correct. Only the infrastructure side of that had Republican support. Yes, sir.
and I don't know about the IRA, do you know?
Straight Democratic support.
And therefore, how can we look forward to America solving a problem if one party is driving the truck?
Well, and that's what we're all here for, because what we're trying to do is bring people together. And we actually had a Republican congressman in here who was leading. Former. Yeah.
I think I get where this gentleman's coming from, because he laughed the minute we said bring people together, because you probably heard that before, plenty of times, and yeah, in one ear out the other. Correct. First, I would say the gentleman prior, I think is a good example on how local level is so important with this, because I've talked with Bob about the fact that the Inflation Reduction Act, the infrastructure bill, do this much, and his overall goal is to have adaptation centers in all parts of the country that focus on what climate change means for mountainous areas, low-lying areas, et cetera, and that all of them do the rest of the work. I'm glad that gentleman, Carlos, I'm only saying that because I don't know his last
Bello.
name. In his, even as somebody not in office anymore, he's able to be a big driver in the Miami-Dade area, which is, if Florida's ground zero, Miami-Dade is the center of that.
Center of the epicenter.
Yeah. That, I think, is one of the things. The second thing, and this answer is going to stink, but until people vote in mass, that unless you care about climate, you're not getting my vote. Until that happens, then correct, then there wouldn't be as much movement. And I think the part that I think discourages someone like yourself is that that's the kind of thing where it's hard to have control over how other people vote, because it's the most private, one of the most private things you can do. So my guess is you want to see a lot more, but you almost feel like there's this barrier to get more done because we're not demanding that. Would that be a fair thing to say? I think that's fair. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I,
It would not be passed today. This Inflation Reduction Act could not be passed today, given the makeup of Congress.
Correct. So what he said, because I think in the back it's hard to hear, but you said right now with this Congress, this wouldn't pass and be a side, and that's correct. On the other hand, it has been signed.
so go get your piece of pie.
But no, I totally get it, because sometimes, because look, even my better half will get so upset with me because I get so upset about a lot of things, and she's like, "But you have no control over it, Marco." I'm like, "But I want to have control over it,
Right.
but I'm just this one guy," and so I'm like, I know where he's coming from, so I feel you, and I wish I could give you a way better answer than I just did.
Back row.
I was going to mention, part of it is getting the word out. My daughter works as an advisor to the Department of Energy. She's in the LPO
Right.
program. They got $330 billion with a B dollars from the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yes.
Like, she's in Tennessee today working with the Tennessee Valley Authority. She met with Jennifer Granholm on Monday. Her focus is nuclear energy. And she's going to be working with Senators Manchin, Barrasso, Congressman Fleischman, and it's really bipartisan. The Republicans actually love nuclear energy, believe it or not. So that's kind of one way to go, to really be clean, they're building a reactor, hopefully. Bill Gates has a small reactor that she's been to in Wyoming. So I think that's really part of the way to go, and people need to come to the DOE, LPO, PPO office and ask for these loans. They have a lot of money to give
Well,
out.
that's what I mean. So, this is, the whole idea of this today is to say there's money on the table. It's part of the transition. How we decide to use it is up to us. And if to use it is up to us. But it's there, and it's law, and it's appropriated. So it's good to know about it and know how to use it. And do want to say that the CBO has estimated that there'll be 1.7 million new energy jobs in the U.S. because of the bills that have been passed. That's an amazing part of the climate economy that is emerging in this area. And also the cleaner air will, according to them, reduce deaths from particulates like lung cancer and that kind of thing that is caused by air pollution by 63,000. So there's some, we should celebrate our successes and not just complain that it's not good enough. It's better than it's ever been. So let's do something with it.
It's not even the end. Like, we know we can do it. We just got to do it again, and it takes work and time. That part's not as fun.
I know. But you got time.
I hope so.
So this is
God
yours.
willing.
You said put this in.
Yes, so another thing, thank you for putting this in, by the way. He had me look at all the slides, and I said, there's something else that we should talk about. So one of the things that I think was under the radar last year was it was the USPS Reform Act, and that one had broad bipartisan support. So it passed, I want to say March of last year, and it was supposed to help stem the post office from continuing in the red because of a law in 2006 that changed healthcare benefits for retirees. And long story short, it's been bleeding money due to congressional action. So Congress had to, this Congress anyway, the last one, had to reverse that. But one of the things it did, which hasn't really gotten many headlines, is that it's helped to deliver more resources where the new fleet the USPS is going to be using is going to be far more electric. Initially, it was going to be 10% electric, and the rest was going to be gas, guzzling coal. And because of the laws that were passed and signed, or the bills that were passed and signed into law last year, including the Post Office Reform Act, it might not even have registered to you, conflating that with climate. But part of what it did was it helped make this a thing, where the new vehicles are going to be far more environmentally friendly. Obviously, 100% is like the goal, but it went from 10 to 40, and I think even up to 50, I think, for a lot, like once they're purchased in 2025 or 26, a lot, like almost all electric at that point.
That's progress.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marco.
Yeah, so it's exciting. Yeah.